It's hard to find a good ace these days, especially when you get to the middle and late rounds of your fantasy drafts, but we're going to try. There are a few pitchers who are just dripping with upside and have that potential to really break through in 2024. I call them league winners. Now we suddenly have a bunch of potential league winners in the Baltimore Orioles rotation, some young pitchers who stepped up last year, and now all of a sudden they got themselves a true ace. That means that Grayson Rodriguez doesn't have to have the pressure of potentially being that team's ace, and that might be good for him, although he probably could be anyways. I was all over Rodriguez last year, one of my favorite prospects, and he was terrible early in the season, let's just face it, just got pummeled. And then he was terrific late, and now all of a sudden we realize what kind of potential he has. He could wind up being frontline starter for the Orioles as soon as this year. The strikeout rate really wasn't elite, but that is going to just get better. It's interesting if you look at Rodriguez's profile, despite having one of the best fastball velocities around, he averages about 97.5 miles per hour on his four-seamer. He had a minus 11 run value on the fastball according to StatCast. But the breaking stuff is better. Had a +5 and his off-speed offerings +7, which balanced out the fastball. Now, if that fastball gets a little bit more movement and, of course, the location gets better and he does it more consistently as he did toward the end of last year, yeah, we have the makings of a full-fledged breakout. As I mentioned, the strikeout rate was only 25% last year, which is still about league average, but his projected K rate for this coming year is 28%. Look, if you're in a league that happens to still use wins as a category, first of all, get that changed. But second of all, this is also a category where he can help the Orioles now, one of the better teams in the American League, and Rodriguez won't be going up against the opponent's ace anymore. He's going to be probably the number 3 guy in that rotation. All told, Rodriguez totally has the arm talent to be a breakout, and he's in position to succeed. So really, there's no reason not to take him as a mid-rotation stalwart for your fantasy league. Let's go with another Oriole. Nope, not talking Kyle Bradish. He already broke out last year. I'm going to go with a guy who is part of that deal. You know, Corbin Burnes became an Oriole not too long ago. The Brewers, in exchange, got a very interesting prospect in DL Hall. And yes, I think he's ready to break out right now. Brewers fans might not be thrilled with this return. I mean, they also got a hitter in Joey Ortiz in the draft pick. But still, you look at trading your ace of Burnes to get Hall back. Looks disappointing, but Hall is a very interesting prospect. He's got a 70 grade fastball. He also has great heat, but he has a plus changeup to go with it. Now, he hasn't done much because he's been kind of in and out of the bullpen mostly in rotation, just in spot starts. He hasn't had a chance to really be a full-fledged starter, but now he definitely will, not just because the Brewers lost Burnes, but because they see him as that kind of player. He can be that type of pitcher. Unlike Grayson Rodriguez, Hall has an elite fastball, and so his secondary stuff is still definitely good. He can induce a lot of swings and misses, and he's done that mainly in the minors because he hasn't stuck around the majors enough yet for us to get a real sense of what he can do. We're going to get it, and I really feel good about his chances here. Again, he's going to be most likely in the rotation from day one, and he probably is going to be a pleasant surprise for Brewers fans, but also for fantasy owners. Now, a pitcher who won't sneak up on anybody is Yuri Perez of the Marlins. It's kind of hard to catch people off guard when you're 6'8". He got a ton of attention last year, not just because of his size, but also his heat. He's got those 98 miles per hour on the regular, and every bit of attention he got was deserved. He was amazing when he first got the call up to the majors, despite being super young. And it's not just that he's a flamethrower. This is a legitimate starter with great secondary stuff. He's got 2 really effective breaking balls and a power change that's kind of become a staple of the Marlins. Look, the only thing that really stopped him from being a Rookie of the Year candidate last year was injury. The innings pitched, that kind of shut him down and then wanted to limit his innings. I don't think they'll do that this year. They have no reason to, and we'll see hopefully a full season of Perez with no restrictions, nothing holding him back. He's easily a candidate to break through and become a top 20 fantasy pitcher. The upside isn't quite as high for Tanner Bibby in Cleveland, but he's somebody who can definitely be rock solid in your rotation and can sneak up on some people. But last year, Cleveland, out of necessity, called up a lot of young pitchers because of so many injuries. So you got to look at guys like Bibby and Logan Allen. And I made the mistake early on of feeling that they were kind of comparable, just lefty-righty. And that was wrong because really Logan Allen, not that good. And if you look at this coming year as far as projections, and if you evaluate something like Stuff Plus, I've talked about this in previous videos. This is Eno Saris of The Athletic. One of his formulas on how to evaluate just pitcher talent, if you will. And so if you look at Tanner Bibby, he's just right there, 101 Stuff Plus, slightly above average. Logan Allen, 78. And the projections for this year are for Allen to basically get hit really hard. But Bibby is showing growth. Bibby posted a 2.98 ERA as a rookie, had a low walk rate of 7.7%. And what I like is he's got this 4-pitch mix where he can keep hitters off balance. He's not a flamethrower unlike some of the other pitchers I've already talked about, but he's got good command of his off speed and breaking stuff. And you know how some organizations just know how to develop pitchers and some don't. Cleveland is a team over and over again. We see young pitchers can be successful there. Bibby, I feel like, is next in line. I also really like Tristan McKenzie. You know, I don't know that he's someone who's going to be as reliable just because of all his injuries. I love McKenzie, but I think Bibby is really kind of going under the radar. Another team with a ton of young talent in its rotation is Seattle. Well, let's pick on a guy who could be a breakout candidate because he is going a lot later in fantasy drafts than guys like Logan Gilbert and George Kirby, who I also like a lot. But what about Brian Wu? He's got a fastball, sweeper, and a slider that are all above average, and he can get whiffs, although he only struck out 25% of batters last year. He can do better than that. He's got the stuff to do it. He was successful in the minors. Seattle not only also has a good track record of developing pitchers, but it's a pretty pitcher-friendly park. What we need to see from Wu is that he solved some of his trouble against left-handed batters, had some negative splits there, but if he can do a little bit better commanding against opposite-handed hitters, I think he'll be just fine. There's still plenty of upside in this young arm. Brian Wu is somebody who could take a huge step forward. And if you just want to bet purely on talent, let's look again at Matt Brash in Seattle. Now, Brash isn't in consideration for rotation anymore because of command. Right? He's one of the most talented arms in that system, but his command is all over the place, walked too many batters, which is why he's now a reliever. And not even the closer either. He had a ton of holds, I think 25 last year, but only 4 saves. Well, Paul Sewald is no longer in Seattle, but Andres Munoz is still lurking there, and they just acquired Gregory Santos, who I talked about earlier this offseason. He's one of my favorite deep sleepers at reliever, although now it looks like he's not getting saves unless there's injuries. This is a deep bullpen now. Great for real life, great for the Mariners, but what can Brash really do in fantasy? Is he going to get a hold of this closer job? Well, I'll tell you right now, I like both Munoz and Brash. This could be a committee. That means both guys are valuable. I know you say, well, that eats into each other's value, but if you have 2 players that could each get you 15 plus saves and post elite strikeout rates and keep your ratios low, why wouldn't you want that? Brash averages 98 on his fastball, and he has, honestly, one of the best sliders in the game. He's got filthy stuff, and the walk rate, I know, was super high early on. He's kind of harnessed control of it. It's getting better, and although he may not have a grip on the closer's job as of right now, we also should look at the fact that Andre Munoz has had a lot of injuries in his young career, so there's no sure thing there. And Santos, who I mentioned earlier, I like him, but he's also coming off some injury. So Brash could be the guy as the season begins. You're going to have to speculate on saves at some point. There are only so many closers to go around, only so many closers who will keep their job all year long. So when you're looking for somebody with tremendous upside in the later portion of your draft, I can't think of anybody who has more upside than Brash. Those are some of the pitchers I think could be league winners this year based on where you take them in fantasy drafts and their upside this year. I already reviewed some of my favorite hitters that I think are league winners, so if you missed that video, you can catch it right here.